Hi, and thanks for tuning in to the Path 11 podcast. I am your host, April Hanna. At the Path 11 podcast, we are here trying to deliver leading-edge research on consciousness, healing, and metaphysics. And just like you, we are trying to answer the big questions about life. Who are we? Why are we here? And what is our purpose? We hope by listening to our podcast, it will make each day you live on Earth a little easier to understand. And now for today's podcast. Well, hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Path 11 podcast. So today I am joined by someone who is no longer a stranger to the Path 11 podcast, but my good friend and colleague, Kelly Doherty. She has been on the podcast probably 3 times. Maybe this is her 4th. We have a few other episodes that you can check out, but she is a grief expert and also the founder of the Center for Informed Grief. And last year, well, no, it was actually this year, but kind of last year, we had this crazy idea that after we got trained in our induced after-death communication type of therapy, that we said, let's do a retreat. Let's do a therapy intensive retreat. And we hiked all around New York and tried to find a really beautiful retreat center, which we did up at Silver Bay, New York. And we planned a 3-day intensive therapy retreat using the after-death communication protocol that was founded by Alan Botkin. And so this episode today is going to be, I guess, a few different things. So we wanted to tell you about our experience, 1, from the therapist perspective, but 2, also share some amazing stories that we witnessed. I think we were quite in shock as well of how this weekend went. And then one of the last episodes, I interviewed Tom Nemi, and he wrote the book Inspired Life, Beautiful Death. So we love this book, and we're going to pick apart some of the things just to highlight, because after the retreat, we had this experience. We went back and started reading some more of Tom's book, and everything just kind of correlated with what we experienced as well. And one of the things that we kind of want to start off with that Tom also says in this book, and Kelly, you might be able to pull it up. Oh, wait, quicker. No, I got it right here. So we met with 6 individuals in March of 2025, and they came on a Friday and they left on a Sunday, and all of us were changed. And the amount of, I would say, shift, maybe you would call, I don't know what you would call it, Kelly, but the amount of work that was done in 3 days was pretty much equivalent to years of therapy. And it was condensed and it was intensive. And on page 206 of Tom Nemi's book, he has a quote in there that says, "Who wants to spend 12 weekly sessions on a therapist's couch talking about the worst thing that happened to them when it can be done in 2 days?" And we saw the power of that. So let me just welcome Kelly first. Kelly, welcome back to the Path 11 podcast.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here, especially on this topic as you're talking about it. I feel like my eyes welling up with tears, though, because it was just so magical and amazing. Like, to even think about what we went through and what our participants went through, it was truly life-changing and just so overwhelming to feel again when we're talking, as you're bringing it up.
Yeah. And, I'm going to set the stage for everybody so they can kind of like get a visual picture in their heads. And I have a lot of pictures. So either I'll edit them in, or I'm going to ask Mike to maybe do his magic and edit some of these pictures in. So if you guys decide to watch this on YouTube, you can actually see what we're talking about. So we headed up to Silver Bay, New York, which is around Lake George, up in the Adirondacks. And we went to Silver Bay YMCA Retreat Center. And it is lovely. There's so many parts about this land that feel so sacred. It's protected, right, Kelly? Didn't they buy up all of these acres of land so other people can't build them?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of old buildings and cottages, and you feel like you're being transported back in time. But then they also have some newer buildings. And we stayed in the hotel, which was built in 2019. So all of the participants that come, they get their own hotel room so that they can go back. They don't need to share a room with anybody. And also where we stay is where the dining hall area is. So it's very convenient. But then we made our way to 2 buildings on the campus, and we chose the first building, Field Memorial. So it's this kind of old wooden green, painted green building with these stairs going up. And you open up the doors, and the first thing that you see is this beautiful stone fireplace. And then to the right and to the left, there are these huge wooden kind of billow doors. I don't know what you call those. What do you call those doors? That
I don't know, folding doors.
old
I don't
folding
know.
door, kind of like French doors or whatever, that are partitioned off. And then you have two other rooms to the right and the left. So those two rooms became our therapy rooms. We had about 10 sound machines going on. We had music in the background. And so that's where Kelly and I met with the clients, or participants, might be a better word in this case, to do their 2 IADC sessions. And in the center of that building is where we gathered for our group shares, our sound healing, and we just had a chance to come back and also do a fire ritual there. In each corner of the room, I brought in some of the teachings of one of my teachers, Jeanette, who trained with a shaman, a West African shaman by the name of Malidoma Somé. So not only did we have this beautiful fireplace that we turned into an ancestor altar to honor the element of fire, but then in each corner of the room, we had an altar set up for the spirit of water, the element of earth, the element of mineral, and the element of nature. So the energy that held was just beautiful. And I'm going to have Kelly talk about that experience too, because I'm not new to this. I've been doing these types of rituals for about 22 years. And I said to Kelly, the room and the energy of the room is going to change once we light these. So this was quite an experience for her too. But before I get her to talk about that, the second building that we rented out was called the Liz Gray Pavilion. And it's in the shape of an octagon, and it's all wood. There's like these benches in there, and we decided this is a perfect place for people to receive Reiki and healing energy. So we turned the Liz Gray Pavilion into a Reiki room. And we had all crystals down there. It kind of became a mineral shrine. There was also a kind of a fake fireplace there. And the participants were asked to bring framed photos of their deceased loved ones for both rooms. So anytime they were in those buildings, they could connect and see their deceased loved ones. And then on the side of the Liz Gray Pavilion, there's a beautiful labyrinth. So that building is so magical and holds so much healing. So these are some of the photos that, we'll post so you can actually see, what this looked like. And it really just turned into a healing sanctuary. So Kelly, what were some of your thoughts? And I had said to you, all right, we're going to be building these altars and this is what it's going to look like. And I'm telling you, things are going to shift and change. The amount of energy that's going to come once we ignite these is going to feel different. So what were your thoughts on that?
I didn't know what to expect, I think. And I was like, well, I'm just going to trust the process. I was like, might be a little woo-woo for me, but I'll go with it and see what happens. And even reading the feedback from our participants, the fire ritual that we did on Saturday night was just amazing. It was so healing. It was so powerful and truly life-changing, I think, for our participants. I think opening up the altar space and even just sharing as people what they were putting on the altars and the commonalities, some of the connections that the women had, like the synchronicities, like you can't really, like you could have never, like even if we wanted to have had that happen, I don't think we could have. It just happened organically and naturally. And I think that's some of the power of who was supposed to be there was there, right? And who came together it was just perfect group. And so the rituals, I think it just added an element of community, right? And I think you and I have talked so much, April, about we don't grieve in community anymore. And I think what you brought in was that element that is so lacking and so needed when we're grieving, right? We go to the funeral and that's really the last opportunity that we have to grieve together with other people. And being able to come together and share that space and our grief with each other, I think that's what the magic is. And to, even like one of the women, she was, because of her birth year, she's a fire, right? And she took that duty of making sure that fire was always going. So like, it was so funny to watch. Like even on her breaks, you'd see her coming in and putting more firewood on the fire. She's like, I got to keep up with it. Like, it's just like, she really got into it. I loved that. But I think it was just something magical, the energy in that space. I've done a couple of IDCs since, in my office. And I'm like, honestly, I'd rather do I'd rather be back up there and do them because there was just something, I can't even describe it. It just felt different.
Yeah.
It was something that opening that space up and having that. And what we created it was magical. I mean, I know I have probably said that word several times, but I can't really come up with a better word to describe what happened. And it's just this feeling and just like amazing.
Well, and the fun thing about this, so, when they're there, we also teach them what their element is in this tradition. So they become more attached to their altar element. And we figure that out by the year that you're born and the last number of the year. So this is something that Malidoma was able to, figure out. And it's pretty accurate when you kind of understand and learn the different qualities of people who are the element of fire and water. I mean, everyone who was their element, it was pretty perfect. And then I also decided that we were going to find out the element of the dead people that were in the room. And we made memorial candles for them. Kelly did. And we were also able to put the deceased people on their element as well to honor them. And so that's also kind of like a fun aside of something new that people learn. And then we also had some oracle cards that people were able to, pick during their breaks and, just get some extra messages on some downtime. And we had one woman out of 44 cards over 3 days, she kept picking and kept getting the same exact card. And it was the card of signs. It was an angel card deck, which that blew her mind too. She's like, how is this possible?
Well, and you have to add, so the last time she picked a card, she was between two cards. And so she went with the one and it was signs. And then she decided to flip the other one to see what it was. And it was trust.
Right. Trust
the signs, right?
Yeah. So that's kind of like, night one, everybody gets together. We begin to understand and figure out, what element everybody is. Everybody gets a chance to talk about the person that they are hoping to connect with for the weekend. So we get to share pictures and tell stories, put their pictures up on the ancestor altar, and then we're able to actually ignite the altars and to really turn them on. It's like turning on the energy for the weekend. And every morning we would light the altars and get the energy going. At night, we would close them. So there was like this extra element of energy and support. And then the other portion of that, there's a kind of a cycle schedule that happens is that Kelly and I each take one person at a time and they get their private IADC session for 90 minutes. And then while those people are getting their IADC session, we have another group of 2 people that are in the Reiki room and they're receiving Reiki. So they might be setting their intention for their IADC session, maybe getting some anxiety out. And then we have a group of 2 people who are off journaling, walking the grounds, connecting with nature, maybe writing a letter to the person that they're bringing there that weekend to connect with. And then everybody rotates. So everybody's getting the energy session, everybody's getting a break in journaling and contemplation, and then everybody is getting the IADC session. And then we do the same exact thing again on day 3. And then we all come together and share. So now we also wanted to share a little bit about our experiences as therapists, watching this unfold, being in the room with people who are accessing their core sadness of their grief, which it's really intense work, I have to say. I was kind of like, oh my gosh, what do we get ourselves into? How are we going to get through 6 sessions of this? It was a lot, but it was so rewarding in the end. And I feel like Kelly and I both learned so much. But it was definitely, I feel like you and I went through a spiritual initiation that weekend in really holding space in a totally different way than we normally do in the therapy room. And the other thing that I do want to say before I hand it back over to you is when you said, I'd rather be up there doing these sessions than in my office. I think the magic of what happens where we are at the retreat center is that nobody has to worry about being too loud, about crying too loud, about making noises that they need to make. When you step into a therapist's office, typically there's other offices and other people that are in that building. You can see traffic, you can hear other people. And to really be able to access your sadness in the way that we want you to, I think is still a little contained. That's kind of hard to do when you're walking into a therapy office building, especially Kelly's, because she's in a building with 7 other therapists. So there's sound machines, people walking in and out, all the time. So what our retreat, I feel like, really provides people is a whole nother level of confidentiality and just quiet, safe space to really let the sadness just come out. So what are your thoughts, Kelly?
Well, and I also think for people, right, when we're doing it in our office, okay, go home after day 1, stay with your sadness. The reality is, as soon as they leave our office, they're going back to being a mom or a partner or whatever their job is, right? And some people, I don't think they do a great job at staying with that sadness, even though we encourage them to. They get sucked back into life, right? And so when you're up there, what was also so magical and amazing, we're the only group there.
Right. Yeah.
It was so quiet. Like, it was a little like, I was like, did they just like leave us here? But it was, I think that was so nice to just know like that space was ours and we didn't have to worry. So if people wanted to, go walk down to the lake in between their session, they could, and they weren't going to be bothered. They didn't have their day-to-day responsibilities to worry about. Wi-Fi works, but it wasn't, texting. I don't know why, for some reason, my texts never go through up there. So I think it's like, okay, Kelly, shut down, right? While I'm up there. And so it gives this opportunity. And then you're staying with these people who are going through this shared experience with you. And so the communication, the stories we got to have over meals, and also having I think what was so amazing is, we were kind of back and forth. Do we have the Reiki practitioners with us through everything? And they were part of the opening ritual. They were part of the fire ritual. They were part of all that. And so it became this really beautiful community and connection. And to have those relationships and the signs that even they shared with each other. And so I think there is something magical about that space. You also have your own room and your own bathroom. You get to go back to it. It's a beautiful space. You have a balcony that overlooks Lake George. You don't have that at home, right? So there is these elements that I think it's just, and I'll be honest, it's like therapy on steroids.
Yes, I agree.
We're taking things to a whole new level and different piece, but to see the changes, I can't wait till we get to that part because that is so amazing. But, as a therapist perspective, these sessions were intense. They were intense to watch our participants go through. I had a lot of empathy and sympathy and compassion for them as they were going through them, but we trusted the process. And I think we had faith in the process, and they worked. They did what they were supposed to do. And I think sometimes people that aren't necessarily grief informed, when you're with a therapist who isn't, and you get emotional like that, you may get shut down, right? You may get handed that tissue. Here you go, shut it down. Or that you can't have that outward expression. And so we were able to hold and allow that space, I think is a better way to describe it, allowing that opportunity to not shy away from that sadness and push through it. Because what we know is when we push through that sadness, that's where the magic is. And that's where the changes happen. And so, I've been a therapist. You and I are both 23 years in.
Mm-hmm.
And I think these were some of the most powerful and amazing sessions I've ever witnessed.
And day 2, it was hard for me to keep my shit together because it was so amazing to see the transformation, the physical transformation you could see in these people's faces. But day 1 was holy crap. What are we doing here, right? It was a lot. I remember looking at you one time. I was like, I have to walk down to the water. Let's walk down to the water. And thank goodness, we had this beautiful space that's so healing and amazing. And all of these buildings are dedicated to people that have died. So there's all of that, everywhere you look, in memory of. At the water, right? This is built for someone's mom, right? And here we are, 2 motherless daughters doing this. It's just it's just the perfect place. But being able to walk down and have that break, I needed that.
Yeah.
But we trusted the process. And because we did, and we were there to support them and encourage them and know when to push them a little bit more, it was life-changing.
Yeah. And I really appreciate the training that we got, that was really kind of hammered into our heads. hold on to your seats because it's going to get intense, but just trust the process. You have to trust the eye movements. I mean, they will move those images and traumas and sadness out of that part of the amygdala in the brain and put it right where it needs to go. And I think that what Kelly and I were feeling too, when you think about just emotions and them being energetic and energy, we were sitting in the depths of some of the darkest places that people held in their bodies. And it took all of me sometimes. And during a couple of sessions, I started to cry along with them. I just couldn't contain it. I got choked up. And that's also a beautiful thing. And one of the things that I, let people know too is that this isn't, even though we're applying a therapeutic technique and we are therapists, when you move into this type of community setting, we really all become one, especially when we move into the rituals and the fire rituals and the water rituals, that we're doing, and even the shares. Kelly and I needed to participate in all of these to make sure that the community energy wasn't broken, that there was no hierarchy of we are therapist, you are client type thing. And I also think that when people are crying, and if you're feeling that emotion and tears come, it's like you're crying with them or for them as well. So it's like, the sadness that was in them was probably also sadness that was within me, that also helped me to kind of, bring up for myself as we were all healing as a community. And the striking thing for me is, you always hear this saying, and Kelly, I know you and I have probably said it so many times, that nobody grieves in the same way. Everyone grieves differently. And so we had 6 participants. I had 3 people. Kelly had 3 people. And each of my 3 grieved differently. Their sessions looked different. Neither of them, not any of them, were identical. Even in the way that their grief sounded, the way that the grief came out of their eyes, the tears were different, the breath was different, and it was so interesting to watch how unique grief is in each individual. Kelly and I, interestingly enough, we each had one person out of our 3 have very somatic physical experiences when they were accessing their sadness. And so one of my people, it was a lot of sound and noise and very primal, almost like grunting, and as if she was giving birth. And we kind of, had a chance to process and talk about that. And, we're not sure if that was what was happening, but that's just the way that her body was moving. I mean, it looked like she was in labor and that she was giving, birth to the grief. And she had such transformation and an amazing after-death connection with both her deceased husband and son that maybe we'll get it. I don't know if we'll have time to talk about it today, but that was pretty profound. And that really showed me how physical grief can also be, for many people, and how it really gets stored in our bodies. And this person, both of those deaths for her happened approximately 10 years ago. So for those of you who are listening to this and wondering, oh gosh, my death was so long ago, there's no length of time, really. I mean, anybody can come to this type of retreat. And then Kelly also had a very physical somatic. And I don't know if those are typical, to be honest. Like in my therapy office session, out of all the ones that I've done, I've maybe had 2 people that have had some physical somatic, more like shaking and, legs really bouncing and moving a little bit and just feeling a little bit uncomfortable. And just so you guys know, not to scare you, like this will dissipate. It dissipates, it releases. This isn't like a state that they had to stay in for a period of time. But I also think, given how quiet and just safe it was, it allowed both of these participants, I think, to allow their bodies to do what it needed to do and not feel like somebody on the other side of the door is going to hear me, or, it's like we gave them an ample amount of time. So I know you had a very somatic session too. So, what would you like to share about yours?
It's stuck in us, right? There's the good old Bessel van der Kolk book, The Body Keeps the Score, right? And our body holds on to us, and also our brain holds on to this stuff as well. Sometimes the psychology drives that biology piece, but it's sometimes we have to move to get it out. It's about sometimes trusting where your client's at and seeing what they need. and just getting it out of their body. And the more you process through that sadness, what happens is the sadness peaks, and then people find a feeling of peace, right? And I think they all started to achieve that on day one, which is not always the case.
Right.
When you do this in your therapy office. And so sometimes day one still, day two, they still can come back with a lot. I didn't see as much day two, right?
Neither did I.
There was so much resolve. Several of the women actually said before they even had their second ADC session, I think I could go home right now and feel like it was worth it. Like I feel so much better already. And as we talk, as Tom talked on your podcast last time, and he talks in the book, and we talk, the after-death communications are icing on the cake for these sessions, right? Processing that sadness is where the magic is. We tend to not sit with that real intense sadness. And so we can kind of keep stuck, right? And people come all the time to our offices and say, oh, I haven't had any signs. I can't feel connected, because they haven't processed through some of that. And once you're able to do that, you can get more connected. All of our clients did have ADCs, which is absolutely amazing. Some had them the very first day it was happening. Dreams the first night, the second night. So there was a lot happening really quickly. But, and I know we're probably making it sound like, oh my gosh, people are like, oh, I don't know if I could do it. You can do it. You're feeling it. You've already experienced so much of this. You're supported. You're grounded. You have, a community. It may sound like a lot, and it was a lot, but it's life-changing. And what I'm seeing from these clients, we're 6 weeks past it, is still unbelievable.
Yeah. Yeah. I had a chance to follow up too with one of the three, and she just says there is just this overwhelming sense of peace and relief that has really shifted within me. She's like, I feel like I no longer need to search for answers. And the people, I have to give all of those 6 participants credit. They met the criteria because they were all able and willing, and they were ready. And, one of the ladies was like, all right, I'm here. I'm laying it all out. I am just going for it. She was like, I've paid my money, and I am going to do everything that you tell me that I need to do. And I'm just going to go with this whole experience. And she was one of the people that really changed in front of our eyes. Her physical appearance shifted. And I'm not sure if any of you who are listening ever saw stress come off of another person's face or their face become younger. I mean, it was like a shape shift in 3 days. And not just her, but everyone's energy shifted, their faces shifted, some of the wrinkles lifted. The Reiki
10 years younger.
Yeah, they did. The Reiki practitioners even sensed it and felt it. They were like, day one felt really heavy. They were like, day two, people looked different. The Reiki practitioners were commenting on it. They were like, the energy felt different within their bodies. So we were all experiencing this shift, like internally, energetically. But then we also had this piece, like physically, that we could see it transforming before our eyes.
Can I just read a couple of things from Tom's book?
Yeah.
That I think go perfect with what we're talking about.
Yes.
So it says, some grief clients see their sadness as their connection to their loved one and feel guilty if they don't feel sad. But when the sadness subsides, you return to the essence of that connection, which is love. The love of your connection to your loved one is a diametric opposite of loss, fear, and separation. When the love is felt more strongly than the sadness, even momentarily, ADCs are more likely to occur.
Yeah, and I think that's the beauty of this therapy, is that once you're really able to separate out that sadness and also the trauma, like some of my participants were stuck, were on visions of the day of death still, after years had gone by, or the day of the death and incidences, that had happened. And, once you're able to process that trauma out with the eye movements and the bilateral stimulation, and then really be in touch with that core sadness, it's like you're just emptying like a pot of sludge, and then like you wash it with clean water, and it's like, now you can just put fresh water in it all the time. And I think that's really the beauty of this type of therapy is that shift that people really feel. And granted, I think Kelly's also reading that because there was some feedback of people, saying, I still feel really good and I feel guilty for feeling happier than I did before. What does that mean? Does that mean, I am, minimizing my loved one's death, or that have I forgotten about them? All of these things that the brain can kind of try to play tricks on you if you're not feeling that sadness. And so I think that's also why Kelly wanted to read that quote.
Can I read this one then too?
Yeah.
Many grieving clients worry about what it would mean to not feel sad anymore or to find joy, laughter, and happiness again. Was it disrespectful to the person they love? Would it mean they didn't miss their loved one as much? Only when clients were able to separate the intensity of their grief as a measure of their love for the person who died could they truly let go of those judgments. Living fully again and embracing positive emotions does not lessen the love and respect you hold for the person who passed, nor does it diminish the magnitude of your loss.
Yeah, your love to that person is your connection, not your pain.
Exactly.
And I think that's important for people to hear. So we got so excited. I mean, Kelly and I were like, this is all we want to do for the rest of our lives. Can't we just do this every single weekend? And yeah, logistically we can't. We're both married. We have husbands. We have animals. We can't just run away off to Silver Bay every weekend, even though we would love to. But we have planned another one for October, and we're already halfway full. So we're recording this on May 1st. So hopefully we'll get this podcast out shortly. If you are interested and our retreat is full, our next one is October 24th through the 26th. I actually spoke to somebody yesterday, and, we're bringing her in and on this retreat. And she's like, I don't care if I get an after-death communication. That's not what I'm coming here for. She's like, I feel my husband around me all the time. She's like, I need to put my pain somewhere. I need to do something with my sadness. So I was like, well, you're going to be in the right place. So, this is like we talked about, the ADC is the icing on the cake, and you may have a very strong connection with the person who died. And that's great. There were, I think the majority of the people that came already had that, which I think also made them a really good candidate to stay open to, deepen that connection. But we do have another one coming up in October, the 24th through the 26th. You can go to our website. It's iadcintensives.com. You can also find it if you go through my website of hannahshealing.com. And there is a little bit of a screening process. So we have a Google form. You'll click on a little button there. It'll take you to the Google form. You can fill it out, and then you'll receive an email from us, and then we'll schedule a phone call with you. If we fill this retreat up pretty quickly, we might be able to get a second one on the calendar of the fall. We'd like to go up to Silver Bay when it's off season, which also makes it nicer. There aren't as many people there. It's a little chillier because we're there in early spring and kind of mid-fall, but we would love to have you join us. And this experience is intense, but it's going to save you time. It's going to save you time in your life where you can kind of get back to your life. And, it's like, would you rather do 3 intense days of therapy in this, or do you want to do this for a full year, an hour at a time? So I really hope that you guys will check out what we're doing. We'll put the website in the show notes as well. And Kelly, I know you have to run off to another meeting. Any last parting thoughts, words, things that you'd like to share?
I think I want to clarify, there are moments of intense, absolutely, but there's also moments that are absolutely amazing, happy, joyful.
Oh, yeah.
It is not, you're not there for 72 hours in an intense thing. It is amazing. It is truly life-changing. It is, if you are feeling really stuck, feeling like you can't move forward in your life without this person, if you're not having these after-death communications because the sadness is getting in the way, you want to feel more connected to them, you want to be able to learn to live again, this is it. This is what's going to help you get there. I truly believe that.
Yeah. And I think, there was also intense joy, intense awe, intense connection. Like the intensity was all around, and, maybe I'll share one after-death communication that one of the participants had. That was a lot of fun. And this participant had brought a photo of her husband, and he happened to bar owls. We had another participant whose son had an owl tattoo. So these two people like made a connection immediately. The owls were like everywhere. And on day 2, this participant, her husband had come in and they had a really amazing ADC together. But one of the things that he said at the end of her session was, follow the birds and meet me at the lake. So this lake is pretty huge, and there's a lot of buildings and a lot of places that she could have walked to meet him at the lake. So after her ADC, she had her 90-minute break, and she went down to the lake. She wound up at one of the buildings called the Boathouse, where there's a lot of rocking chairs. And she was just sitting there and journaling, and all of a sudden 2 birds came. And she's like, follow the birds. So she looks up at the sky, she follows the birds in the sky, and then all of a sudden they disappear. And as they disappear, she kind of looks directly down. And what does she see but an owl? Now, it's a wooden owl. Okay. At first, I thought it was a real owl. I was like, what? There's an owl right down by the lake. But I guess what we learned is that they will put wooden owls to scare maybe some of the birds off, right? And the owls were very connected to her husband. So follow the birds. She listened to this communication with him, followed the birds, brought her eye level down, and then saw the owl. And so there were a lot of stories like that, shared. And then when people got a chance to share what happened in their ADC sessions, and then finding out the synchronicities when we're eating and, talking to each other, those were intense, fun, joyful, like uplifting stories as well. So I'm glad that you mentioned that, Kelly. We don't want people to be scared off of like, oh, this is so intense. This is so intense. But it's like intense in an amazing way. Like, I think the other thing too, for me personally, when I left there, I felt so alive. It's like, even though we were, talking about death, I think what I realized that there truly is no death. I mean, I think everybody felt so alive and connected to life and all of the signs and all of the beauty and all of the magic and the synchronicity that could happen. It was really hard to leave. It was hard to leave there. But yeah, it was an amazing experience. And so if you'd like to learn more, head on over to that website, iadcintensives.com. Maybe you might even be able to Google Lake George Grief Retreat After Death Communication, and I'm sure the website will pop up. And yeah, check out some more information. Go down your own rabbit hole with this. And I'm sure Kelly and I will be back on after our next October retreat, and would love to maybe even hear some of your stories. Feel free to write in. You can email me at april@path11productions. All right, so we're going to sign off. I'm going to sign off with my mom saying, shine on, everyone. The world needs your beautiful light. Take care until our next episode. Thanks so much for tuning in to today's show. If you haven't already, please subscribe and rate and review the Path 11 podcast in Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Also, this podcast is made possible by our sponsor, Path 11 TV. Visit path11tv.com to start a 7-day free trial and start streaming over 100 hours of exclusive video content on consciousness, healing, and life after death. That's path11tv.com, and be sure to use coupon code PODCAST30 to take 30% off your annual membership. Start satisfying your spiritual curiosity with a membership to Path 11 TV today. Bye for now.